Hashtag Veterans Day isn't just a post, it's a promise. Today, we're talking legacy worth leaving with a leader who never left the fight. U.S. Marine for 27 years, former director of Marine Corps Public Affairs, and now the guy turning thank you for your service into hiring policies, family support, and real momentum. As Lynchburg Regional Business Alliance board chair and my partner in this work, Chris Hughes is building a region where veterans thrive, not just survive. Expect high support, high challenge, zero spin. This is the Cultivate Experience. Welcome, relational leaders and listeners. This is Cultivate, your podcast destination where we celebrate thriving relational leaders and encourage each other along the influence journey. I am Wendy F. Adams, your host and strategic guide. I believe work shouldn't be a four-letter word, but should inspire, challenge, and fulfill. Through a high challenge and high support model, we will explore the recipe for relational leadership that drives meaningful change. After all, as leaders, we're either driving progress or we're driving the problem. So let's grow together. Welcome back to a fresh episode of the Cultivate Experience. Today is Veterans Day, and we will dig into that with just as much as we can, but we're going to learn a whole lot more. I have the pleasure of welcoming a dynamic leader who walks the talk from the trenches to the boardroom and defines compassionate accountability in a very unique way. Chris Hughes, retired U.S. Marine Colonel and Public Affairs Manager with Georgia Pacific. I am thrilled to have you join us for the Cultivate Experience.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm honored to be here. I really am.
Now, I've already told Chris in our green room time, and our green room time expands quite a bit. But when I get it wrong, he's going to fix it today because we're going to learn together. You know, Chris, you and I, we share a passion for our Lynchburg, Virginia community, even in sharing our 15 minutes of fame as being centerpiece famous during this year's Lynchburg Regional Business Alliance annual meeting. But there's so much more to that. And it all comes back to that why. Why is it important to you to take such an active role, a volunteer role in our community?
I just love a good challenge. I like a challenge. I like using the skill sets that I have and that I've developed over a long time on behalf of the causes that I care about and the organizations that I care about. So, you know, it was a little shocking when I was asked to serve as the chair of the Lynchburg Regional Business Alliance. It was a little, outside of my expertise and outside of my comfort zone, but I just thought, what an exciting opportunity. And then also to advocate on this issue of veterans and Veterans Matters and Veterans Affairs within the business space. I think it's important to advocate within that business space. And someday I'll transition over to the VFW or the American Legion or one of those groups. But I just wanted to speak on behalf of veterans within the business community.
Well, and I think to see that as an opportunity, you see it, but then to step into it. First of all, let's not go any further without me personally thanking you for your military service, right? And for you, it didn't end in retirement, obviously. When you say, hey, there is so much more, one, the advocacy, but then the education for those of us who don't understand.
Yeah.
Obviously, Veterans Day, not just a hashtag for you, well beyond the core. And so we need to be able to have that understanding. You mentioned, yes, advocacy, but within business and that skill set. So talk to us about what are those practical spaces that we're missing right? I want to hear from you in that regard.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate the opportunity to do this. Every day in America, 22 veterans take their own lives. And this is people that have, survived combat, survived some real challenges, and then they transition back to the civilian sector, which should be, quite frankly, very easy, very fluid for them. And somehow they encounter problems that they don't feel like they can handle. And it's complicated. It's very, very complicated. There's not any one, quick fix to it. But I feel like the hiring piece is very important when you look at, you transition from military service to a complete different world. And so many of my brothers and sisters, frankly, they're challenged in that, and it doesn't go according to plans. And then I think that's when depression and other demons take over.
And again, as you educate us in this, as we walk through and understanding what that looks like, but we can understand that basic of, hey, where's our identity wrapped, right? This is what we've known, and now we're transitioning. We understand transition. I mean, it hasn't been that long ago where we sat as a world, not just a country, in the ultimate pivot and transition and
Right.
how that made us feel. And so that's just a glimpse because we weren't walking through what these veterans have seen and frankly weren't supposed to talk about, not coming back into this space. And now they're here. So when you say within corporate
Yeah.
work and bringing them into that space where they can even see them in that space, what can we do? Or what are those initiatives that you are seeing in front of that maybe we're not, or it's not getting the space that it needs for those of us in civilian life to be able to support best?
I feel like the hiring process has got to be reevaluated. And
Mm,
I know corporations and businesses want to do the right thing. And many emphasize a veteran hiring program or veteran hiring initiatives. And what I would say is, unless there's some real rigor to that, unless there's a process to it, some staff against it, then maybe don't advertise that. And what I mean by it is this: when you hang that banner out there saying we hire veterans or looking to hire veterans, it creates an expectation, and it really does. And then the veteran submits the application and maybe gets the instant rejection. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm certainly not the best applicant. And I know a lot of my fellow veterans, we worked something else. We weren't concerned with this space for a period
yes.
of time, maybe 20 or 30 years. And we're just not skilled at the application process. So we get the instant reject, and it becomes demoralizing over time. I feel like we're exceptional candidates for employment, but we're probably in most cases not the best applicant. We're not the best at going through the interview process, to be quite honest. And we torture ourselves to adapt and to transition, and we do have good transition programs. We have really good people in this space on LinkedIn and other places that will train you, coach you, mentor you. But it's still a challenge. It's a very short on ramp to go from wearing the uniform to transitioning and going to work in the private sector. And it can be really hard, and the competed rejections can mount, and
Well,
it can be.
and that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And you spoke it out so well. If we're going to in the private sector, when we're talking about corporate saying, hey, we're here for you, do it well or don't
Yeah,
do it.
that's right.
Right. And that makes so much sense because now we're here to help and to add
Mhm.
to, we've actually detracted and made it
Yeah.
worse, if not. Right. And so I think those are the things that we really need to hear.
Mhm.
When I think of Chris Hughes, I know that
Yeah.
yes, you've had your history in the trenches, but I see you continuing to stay in those trenches for others in this space. What's one of those leadership scars that you're grateful for as you see
Mhm.
where you're advocating because it's forged the way that you're able to lead and advocate today?
The HR process is very challenging. And,
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate being in this space because you have so many HR professionals and SHRM professionals that are tuning in and listening, and they've got a lot on them, and they're held accountable when the hire doesn't work out or it ends up being
Mm-hmm.
a really bad hire. They've got some explaining to do. So I think there's a cautious, safe move on their part where probably their ideal hire is the person that had this exact same job at a competing firm. At a competitive firm, your competition, so you bring that person in, little training, little startup, and I understand that and I get it, but I don't know if that's the dynamic leader of the future that maybe you want. And I feel like that's what the veteran can be. I feel like, we're not going to be the best interview. We're probably not going to have the best application. But when you see words in a resume or in a package like Fallujah or Anbar or Helmand Province and words like that, someone talks about their Ranger tab, certain training programs that's a gem.
You're absolutely correct. And you mentioned SHRM, which is where our HR professionals are really leaning in for that education space. Because what I'm hearing is we've got a gap, right? You say those terms, it means something
Right.
definitive to you. For those of us in the private sector and as civilians, we
Yeah.
know those words only as words, not the experience that's behind it. And so I'm hearing you say we've got a gap that
We,
if we could get that in front of course, in the professional development realm, what SHRM brings to our HR
yeah.
professionals, that they can say, hey, this is what this you're reading, this is what it actually means. And you're right, for those who are engaging in that space here with the show, now you don't know what you don't know.
That's right.
Raising their hands to say, hey, we need someone here who can help fill in the gaps
Yeah.
because we're missing on great candidates. And then, of course, there's the other side of things where how do we help the candidates best truly be able to present themselves in a way that we can define what those
That's
terms
right.
mean.
Yeah.
There's a lack of compromise on your part, and I don't say that in a bad way,
That's right.
meaning they're the best practices and you're not going to compromise even when it's uncomfortable. That was something that was a very strong suit and you needed in the field.
Yeah.
How's that crossed over into your private sector work?
I look at repetitions,
Mm,
kind of that. I go back and reread my Malcolm Gladwell's this time of year each year, and the Beatles became the Beatles not because they were tremendous musical artists. They had more reps than anyone else. They were over in Europe playing for American troops, and they just got more repetitions, more feedback than any of their competitors. And I feel like service members get more repetitions.
mm,
And when I look at my vocation in public affairs, communications, and I look at our experience and what a routine day looked like at Camp Fallujah or some of these other places where we served, and your easy day would have been a career highlight, for my counterpart, in the private sector or in whatever industry, really. And I think it's just important that we find a better way to tell that and to explain it. And I've certainly came up short. I look at some interviews and stuff I had, particularly early on in my transition period, where I just had the opportunity hanging right in front of me, and I just missed it, and I didn't answer the question correctly. I didn't put it in terminology. I can almost recall certain interviews and things where I could tell the exact moment that I lost them,
mm,
and it's hard. It's heartbreaking, really, when you feel like you're qualified for the role, and we're speaking different languages, and I've just made it my quest to try to bridge that gap and to emphasize: can you have a veteran in the room? Can a veteran be a part of the process? And help work with your internal staff going, no, wait a minute. I realize that wasn't a good answer, but let me explain more to you about what that experience was and why this person is still really a good candidate. I feel like that's key. I need a mentor in the room to help guide the other team members.
and that doesn't sound difficult,
Yeah.
right? That's not something that should be mind-blowing, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And what we're talking about, and this is when we're talking about where your experience has started and where you are today and where we're talking private sector, that's all strategy. Making sure
Right.
that we have the correct strategy in place. That's something that we can all understand.
Yeah.
But where we're bridging that gap is where strategy meets the person, the
Right.
people that we're talking about, and making sure that, you've helped redirect public affairs in the Marine Corps and move things along in different channels, bringing
Yeah.
social media and digital and community activation in
Yeah.
place. That wasn't a simple a task along the way. You had to make sure it was strategic, but you didn't
That's
lose
right.
the people who you were engaging with. So this is all about storytelling. What's that
It is.
people's story behind things like that, those type of pivots? How do you not lose people in the strategy when there's so many demands on you and those who are in the position of leading for others to follow?
I think senior leadership within the organization has to be involved. It has to be, quite frankly, their initiative. They have to drive it. If it's
Hmm.
important enough to put it on your website and make an emphasis of, we want to talk to you, veteran, then the CEO uh, needs to own it. I think we're all members of the staff, regardless of whatever our title or role is, and the HR person has competing demands and lots to go on. You've got a workforce to manage, but it has to be an emphasis of the senior leadership team, to ask the question, hey, how many veterans did we hire last quarter? What roles? I think a lot of times you'll see kind of pockets of excellence, and
Hmm.
you'll see a certain section at work that has a lot of of military veterans. And I look at my own facility, within our production, within some of our categories. It's just the best performers are military veterans, and I think what that comes from is they've gotten hired, they've proven themselves, and the senior leadership within that organization says we want more of what this person right here brought, and oftentimes it's the veteran.
Well, and I appreciate you, fleshing that out and making that a lot more tangible for us of there that reality is true, right? It's not
Yeah,
just, well, this is what you feel or no, these are real numbers, real
yeah,
people who are filling these spaces. When we talk about bringing those stories to life, are there? I mean, I would say yes, should there be if there isn't, but that place and space where those stories can be told, where these leaders who have transitioned well from their military career into the to public sector, how do we get to engage with that? What's the best way to draw those out
yeah.
so
Well,
that
I'm
we're
here.
not missing those opportunities?
It's why I'm sitting with you right now, and I feel like you know all of us probably need to step up in this area, and do a better job of highlighting. Like I said, you don't know what you don't know,
Yeah.
and hopefully there's some HR professionals watching right now going, I never thought about that. We hung the sign, we hung the banner out there, and made a promise and made a commitment, and what was the follow up? What does that look like? I think we more of us need to step into this space just across the sector of organizations, and challenge our senior leadership to what does it mean? Why do we have that there? What does it mean? And and it's okay to pull it down if you don't have the support structure in place. That's fine, and you can still work within your organization to highlight it and say, we've got a lot of veterans that really perform well here. Maybe we should be attending a transition program or something of that nature.
Well, and that's what I'm hearing you say is
Yeah,
make sure that if you're doing it, again, we're going to do it well, but
yeah,
also let's create spaces within our organization that we have that control over as leaders to highlight
yeah,
and to then obviously show a realistic picture of where we are. That can't be something we're passive about. It has to be an active role. And I say a safe space. We talk about that often here on the show for people to be able to raise their hands, staff,
yeah,
leaders who are in that emerging space to say I need help, to say
yeah,
can I get more understanding, but also when when we're talking about who we're talking about right now, veterans who are seeing a trend, for them to be able to say, hey, I don't even know if you noticed this as a trend, but
yeah,
can I bring this to your attention? There's another place where having a safe space to bring something
yeah,
out that may not even be noticed is so important in the workplace, right? And so I appreciate how you are putting this into very manageable,
yeah.
tangible terms.
I mean, we should all within our organizations be able to use the challenge process. We should all be able to raise our hand. Quite frankly, it's the best advice you can give your senior leadership is when you're
That's
disagreeing
right.
with them, when you're not giving them. It's easy to give them the answer that they want to hear. The most valuable information you give them is the stuff they don't want to hear. When you
That's
say,
right.
"Hey, boss, look, can we talk about this?"
Yeah. Yeah. The best boss that I have ever had was the one who had a sign on his wall that said, tell me something that I
Yep.
don't want to hear today.
Yep.
And he stuck around for it. He stuck
Yep.
around to have the conversation, and we grew. He
Yes.
grew as a leader. I grew in my leadership. The organization grew. So I can't agree with you,
Yeah.
anymore in that space. And I think I'm biased,
Yeah.
but I think that's what we see at, the Lynchburg Regional Business Alliance, right?
True. True.
We're talking about leaders who are standing out like yourself, who are saying, I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
Let's do this together. And so you said board chair when you were asked, not something that was
Yeah.
necessarily on your radar, definitely stretching you. And to
It is.
hear a military, a Marine colonel say stretched,
Yeah.
that says a lot. You carry a lot of influence, right? In that role, business, nonprofit, civic life, when you sit in that space for
Mm.
relational leadership, that high challenge, high support that we talk about. What does that look like when stakeholders don't naturally align in that space? When you
Yeah.
actually have to be in the room and say, okay, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
And today we're talking about Veterans Affairs. And so we can stay there, but really that responsibility that you have, where do you start?
Well, I love it. I think fostering the free throw of ideas and thoughts. And, I think we all need to get back to the point where we don't have to all agree. We can disagree professionally, cordially, politely. And I think that's when the best solutions come from is when in the Marine Corps, we were told never to fall in love with your plan. You
Mm.
submit your plan to the process and it's going to change. It's going to develop. And quite frankly, it'll usually get better along the way. And then the end product may not look like where you started at all. But, that was the nexus of where the ideas formulated and grew and came together. And I think, what you see is the end result is probably better than what you initially started with. And I feel like we really do a good job of that within the LRBA, and that it's a diverse group of people, diverse backgrounds and experiences and ages and everything. And I think that's what makes it so dynamic and exciting. And just to see some of the initiatives we've got underway, some of the successes, and just bringing people together in that space is it's been very effective, and we've done a great job with it. And I know this group will continue all these great things into the future.
Man, I'm going to hold on to that, Chris. Don't fall in love with your plan
Yeah.
because I'm a planner, right? And and if I'm going to be quite honest, by the time I put a plan in place and share it, I can see it from start to finish and feel like this is
Yeah,
it.
it's my
But
baby.
you're absolutely
Mhm.
correct. When we share that, when we talk about true collaboration and we hand that over and let others touch and pick it apart and ask the questions, it only gets
Yeah.
better. And it doesn't mean that that's not an uncomfortable process along the
Yeah.
way, but I love that reminder. And talk about uncomfortable. I'm going to throw this out there. I'm going to throw myself out there.
Yeah.
Next year, I have the pleasure of stepping actually on the board with
It's
you
great.
because as the chair of the ambassador committee,
Yeah.
that gives me a seat on that board. I want to ask you, what's one place that you'd love to see me step in with higher challenge, higher support in the sphere of influence that I have when I bridge into that space on the board where you're talking about these places, that we've got to touch in a little bit hotter maybe and harder and steeper. Where do you want me to bring some heat?
I think it's easy to go and hang out where you're most liked, where you're most
Mm,
appreciated. And I think the continuing challenge will be to push into those cold corners of the room
ooh,
where maybe groups and organizations that don't want us there, that don't appreciate what our contribution is. I think we've got to reach out to them. We've got to invite them in, include them. We've got to, win these groups over with uh, our effectiveness and show them the great things that we accomplish as a group. Because I think when people are part of us and they're included in our activities, you can't help but love us. It's a great fun group, but if you're on the periphery, and I want us to always own the mission, to
Mm.
continue to keep reaching out and reach out and reach out and reach out and invite, include. And you can tell us no 100 times, but eventually you're going to say, okay, well, that's in the neighborhood. I'll pop in and see what's going on. And I think that's where our engagement, our effectiveness will win over in the end.
Well, I love that those are not just words from you, because I've
Yeah,
had the opportunity to be in the spaces that you say this and then I watch you actually do it. Go into those cold corners and make yourself available, make yourself known, continue to speak on the mission. So I appreciate that it's well beyond the rhetoric, and you're absolutely correct. And every leader who's listening to this today, no matter where you are in that space, that's what our job is.
that's right.
That's what our responsibility is. You and I have another piece in common, and of course you're in public affairs. My background starts in public relations, and I
Hmm.
know for you, you've heard the same thing. Well, you can be a great spinner, right? Spin it.
That's right.
There's a difference between spin and stewardship when we're talking
Yeah.
about communication, and you hit it early on with clarity. What would be your piece of advice to leaders so that they stay on the right side of that line in making sure that they steward that communication with clarity, not just spin it to your point, what they want others to hear?
I think it's the difference between a long-term effective strategy, long-term relationships, and
Mm,
short-lived,
mm,
one-hit wonder type scenarios. And I've worked for some tough bosses and tough environments, and sometimes there is a knee-jerk reaction when the chips are down or something really bad has happened. Okay, well, let's release this on Friday evening, before the holiday weekend, or there is a knee jerk reaction in all of us to kind of take a shortcut and take the easy way out. But, what I've realized, doing this for more than 30 years is, you build respect, you build, a reputation of being forthright, when you kind of do it the right way, which is usually the hard way, the
hmm
difficult way. A lot of times I'll phone someone directly if I've got really bad news and I want to inform the community, or, people that are stakeholders that care about us and have a vested interest in the organization I'm with. I'll take it head on, and I'll do it quickly, directly, usually kind of bluntly, not a lot of fluff to it. What happened? Give us the 5 W's, give it to us quickly. And then, you deal with it. You deal with it effectively. And I found that it's a shorter path, especially when dealing with very bad news. And that's what we want. We want to get through this challenging situation as quickly as possible. And if you do it directly, straightforward manner, then you'll usually get through it more quickly.
Relationship, right? Well, how do they build trust over
Yeah,
time that we can consistently hear and see the same, even when it's hard, even
yeah.
when it's hard? Are you the
Especially when
same
it's hard.
person? Especially when
Yeah,
it's hard. And for where we started our conversation, there's no difference in that. We're not talking about having a veteran who's sitting in front of us and you tell them what they want to hear. But
yeah,
you do want to create a space where we can talk about what we need to hear,
yeah,
right? And give them a place and a space to be able to say, even in that interview, a pause. Let me go back and explain when they continue to read the room that maybe they're not picking up what
yeah,
they're sharing, right? And
yeah,
so again, building that place of trust, and so that we know I'm going to get this consistent
yeah,
information, consistent relationship that's being built, that's what takes us further. And I
yeah.
can't appreciate that enough, that again, I don't just get to hear that from you, but have that great opportunity
Mhm.
to walk it out alongside. What we're doing, especially this season, is really speaking about the importance of leaving a legacy that's worth leaving, right? Being a leader that walks out something that is not just for today, but that what we leave behind is worth someone else picking up and walking
Yeah.
out. And so I want to ask you to finish this sentence for me. A leader's legacy is, what is that for you, Chris? How do we finish that?
Maybe best measured over time, because really, we don't know, right? The moment you
Mm-hmm.
clean up your desk and close the door and walk out, you really don't know. I think it takes time. It takes years, maybe even a clear perspective, many years on how you influence an organization, how you impacted things. Will they remember that you were the one that, did X, Y, and Z? Probably not. But I think you'll know. And I think the people closest to you will recognize it and see it. I was big on restructuring things. We
Hmm.
had, when I began my career, we had people that developed film. We had people that developed video. So during the tenure of my career in uniform, we transitioned from that to a complete digital environment. But yet we
Yeah.
still had people on the roster that developed film, that developed video, and that published newspapers and things. And I broke some china. I hurt some feelings and broke some china and transitioned a lot of those people. And, it was hard. And if you're impacted negatively by something like that, you probably don't have the best opinion of me. But what I left was an organization that was better equipped for the future. Utilized modern technology, transitioned quickly into social media, and use that to tell our story, to expand our narrative. And I've tried to do that in every capacity I've served with since, to always just kind of look at it and recognize what's changing. I mean, look at AI right now. I think we're right on the
Hmm.
cusp of trying to figure out how is AI going to impact everything we do, and to best set up our organizations and entities to thrive in that environment. And I think it takes time to measure the effectiveness of that.
I think it's a great reminder. This is not a quick fix, and nothing that we're talking about is going to just be transformed tomorrow. But we've got to start, right?
Yeah,
And again, that there's that consistency. Breaking China, I've affectionately been labeled the elephant slayer.
there
There are
you
things that
go.
need to be
Yeah,
addressed, and you and I have the responsibility in our leadership on how we deliver those messages.
yeah,
How hard does the plate hit the ground, and
yeah.
am I stomping through as we're walking around this
Right.
or dealing with this elephant? But it still needs to be dealt with, and things still need to be said. So I can appreciate that, and I think, as you say, as we continue to develop, as we continue to leave these pieces of legacy, that is what's going to be the lasting. We might not like it in the moment and it doesn't feel good. And I'm okay with hearing that. But are we leaving something that's actually going to be there?
Right.
As if not, then what's the point in all of this?
Right.
As we wrap up, because this is how quickly things
Mhm,
move,
mhm.
I want you to leave a call to action with those that are listening before the sun goes down on this Veterans Day. What's one commitment that you'd like to leave with the leaders that are listening as they are in a place to hire, to mentor, to come alongside the veterans in their community? What can we start doing today?
Reevaluate your veteran hiring practices from start to finish,
Mm,
from the we love veterans on your website to the physical process of applying. If you ask me what the street address is for the First Marine Expeditionary Force at Camp Del Mar in California, I don't know. I don't know General Mattis's telephone number. I don't know these things that you're
hmm.
asking me for in the job application process. And I don't know if some of those things are important at all. I think it's, what did you do? What did you do in this role? And then we can figure the other stuff out down the road. We've got DD 214s and things like that to let you know if I did a good job or not. But some of the information you're asking from me, and in the drop down
Mm,
school listing, I've never seen Marine Corps Recruit Depot Parris Island pop up. And, that's an important part of every young Marine's experience, that training and what did they do. I've never seen the basic school at Quantico, Virginia pop up. So some of these things that are hallmarks of our service and our commitment that we did, it's not even an option for me to provide that information to you, but yet you're telling me that you want me to apply for this position. So I would say, if you want, um, to put that banner up on your website and say, "We hire veterans. We love you. Please come join our team." Then critically assess, what does that whole process consist of? And if you can't satisfactorily, provide some of the nuts and bolts behind the scenes to make this happen, then go ahead and pull it down. Because I think you serve the veteran better by not building an expectation that you may not be able to fulfill. And you can still hire veterans. It's still a great day. Every time a veteran gets hired, they're going to do a great job, for you and your organization, but let's carefully manage that expectation piece.
I love it. I love it. And so clear. And I hear you say pull it down. And while you do that, then work on it so you can put it
Yeah,
back
that's
up.
right.
Right. So
Yep.
I think that's a great reminder and steps that we can actually start on today individually in our organizations. Chris, thank you so much for bringing what is a very important conversation. And I think sometimes out of pure ignorance, and I'll say that for me,
Yeah.
we don't step into it. We're
Yeah.
nervous too. And you made it very comfortable today to dig in and to make it personal. And so I think that that's probably one of the the biggest benefits that we can have is when we can see ourselves in, hey, I can make a difference here.
Yeah.
I'll be remiss if I didn't
Mhm.
end and wrap us up with a
Yeah.
little bit behind the scenes of who Chris is. Like we
Mhm.
know and we're hearing the resume, but when the day is long or the week's been long or the month's been long, how do you replenish, reset? I think I know the answer. What does the audience need to know about that for you?
Well, um, I'm so fortunate to live in this area. It's it's beautiful, it's tranquil, and I've got the best view. I can watch,
Mm,
the sunrise over the Blue Ridge Mountains, and I get to watch it set over the peaks of Otter, and it's
oh,
just it's
gorgeous.
a great. Um, it provides structure and framework to my day and to my place in the universe to watch that. So that's been very special and one of the great things about living here.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, and I know that hunting is just a small part of your life.
That's a big part. Usually prior to watching the sunset, I'm sitting on a stand, especially this time of year. It's just a wonderful area.
Yeah.
Whatever your passion is, you can really live it here in our area, and I think that makes it so special.
Yeah. And making sure
Yeah.
that you're intentional with that time,
Yeah.
right? You have it around you and we can get to the point. Yeah. But taking the time to actually sit in it. Audience would not be
Yeah.
happy with me if I did not ask you,
I'm ready for this.
do we
I'm
have
ready
a
for this.
favorite ice cream flavor?
Yeah. See, I would ask you to rethink this. I don't
Okay.
think ice cream is an entree. I don't view it as a dessert entree. And I would ask you to reconsider ice cream as more of a side. And
Okay.
I think the primary dish is maybe a pecan pie or maybe a peach cobbler warmed with the splash of vanilla bean ice cream with it. And that is how I choose to use my ice cream.
Come on, Chris, a la mode. I'm there with you, and I can slide into that space. I can. That's a fantastic answer, and we'll explore that a little bit deeper.
Please.
Chris, you've like I said, you've taken us to hard places,
Yeah.
but you've made the trenches be a place where we don't have to get stuck.
Yeah.
And so I can't appreciate you more enough for that. I look forward to our continued time together and for all of us making the changes that are necessary to be able to honor our veterans best.
Right.
Thank you for sharing just a glimpse of your story today and pushing us to take a look at how we can make those changes be impactful for our community.
Yeah. Thank you, Wendy.
Absolutely. Chris, thanks again. Okay, Cultivate collaborators, that's a wrap for today, but you know it's never really over because each of us brings our own special flavor to the mix of relational leadership. So until next time, let's keep stirring things up. Let's keep making an impact and being better together. Thanks, everyone. Before we sign off today, I want to send out huge appreciation to our listeners for tuning in. I hope you felt seen, heard, and inspired to level up your own leadership journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you're ready to level up your leadership, connect with me at cultivateforgood.com. That's cultivateforgood.com.